Genspect Group is an international alliance of professionals, trans people, detransitioners, parent groups and others who seek high-quality care for gender-related distress. The group has recently announced they are establishing a think tank which will develop an alternative to what they see as the flawed standards of care promoted by the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, or WPATH. The think tank will create a non-medical guide relying upon contributions from experts and leading thinkers in various fields impacted by gender ideology, and that's due to be published in November this year. So here to tell me more, I'm pleased to welcome Genspect Director Stella O'Malley and Vice Director Joe Burgo. Thank you both for coming. Stella, I'm going to come to you first about this. Can you explain what WPATH is and your relationship with them as Genspect?
WPATH is an organisation that was started in the late 70s, and they were kind of a motley group of trans people and professionals who were working in the area. And they were created to promote transgender health, to help people who are transitioning. And over the years, they tried to stay as a professional group, and they tried to stay kind of halfway serious. But by the early 2000s, they were overtaken by activists. And that is arguably why activists are running everything these days to do with gender health. And so as we studied it, we started Genspect as a response to this extraordinary gender ideology just creeping everywhere, from cats to schools to young children who have some terribly harrowing stories, and families are being ripped apart because they're, transitioning too early and they're not able to make these, permanent decisions about their bodies. And so we started Genspect as a counter organisation. And we realised that not only do we need to have a counter organisation that offers a different view to how you could be gender diverse, and people could be for example, they could live a very gender diverse life without medicalising. You don't have to medicalise. But also we had to show that because WPATHs, their entire kind of way of operating is #no debate. They don't debate. They shut people down. They absolutely defame people, or certainly they make very little of an awful lot of people's reputations. And as a result, arguably, an awful lot of people have been cowed and silenced. And so we started to say, well, we're going to have to offer something, and we're going to have to go head to head with them. And we have created, as you said, a think tank that kind of is putting what we think are the best minds together to talk about gender in a more rational way and in a healthier way, because our approach to gender is a healthy approach to sex and gender, i.e. create a framework where people can be diverse. Maybe little boys can run around in dresses, but nobody wants to call him a girl, and nobody is making him take puberty blockers or offering a fast track of a medicalised pathway. And so we're creating a gender care framework, and we're going to release it as such at our next conference.
So I'll bring Joe in at this point. It's very interesting what Stella's saying about the activists, insofar as there have been sort of transgender groups in the past that weren't captured by these activists. If you go back 12 years, mermaids even were saying quite sensible things in their promotional literature about how, for the most part, puberty resolves a lot of these feelings of gender dysphoria in childhood. But now they do have this kind of strident activist quality, and as Stella says, no debate. They will lie about their opponents. They will smear them. They're just not interested in participating like adults.
No, not at all. And that's why we are going to them. We're following them where they're holding their conferences and saying, yes, debate. We will debate. We will present a totally different point of view to yours at the same time and in the same place. This is what we did in April in Killarney. We had a conference with educators, lawyers, feminists, a lot of detransitioners, all presenting an alternative perspective to the one that was being talked about just down the road, with a group of medical professionals talking about how you administer puberty blockers and when's the best time to do surgery and hormones. So we just go up against them, and we present a completely different point of view, and we insist that, yes, there will be debate.
So activists will say, but, there are people who suffer from gender dysphoria. They need support, and actually the best way to support those people is to affirm whatever they say that they feel that they are. Is that not right?
Activists say that. They don't have any evidence base to support that. You can say an awful lot of things in life, and it doesn't mean it's true. And what we have found is this affirmative concept, it came in about 10 years ago. There's no long-term evidence. We don't actually know what it is. What is going to be the impact of all of these kids being affirmed? We don't actually know. Nobody knows. So anybody says they know, they're not telling the truth because there is no long-term evidence. But what we do know, because I'm a psychotherapist and so is Joe, we know that if somebody comes in deep pain, we would affirm that they're there. We'd affirm the depth that they're feeling. We'd affirm that they want to be a cat. We would affirm, whatever they want. And obviously most people don't come in wanting to be a cat.
No, that is quite rare, I think.
No, that is extremely.
But it's more
hasn't happened.
It's more like you say, effeminate boys being convinced that they're actually in the wrong body because there's only one way to be a boy, or vice versa.
Or like little butch lesbians who haven't yet discovered that they're a lesbian, who feel very masculine, and as one girl, said, I'm not pretty enough to be a girl. So there's So there's some really kind of sad, vulnerable people who are like, I don't like my body, I don't like who I am, I don't know my sexuality, I don't know where.
It's quite normal though for adolescents, isn't it?
It is. But it's a hyper-sexualised world we're living in, and there's a lot of demands on teenagers, like, well, are you gay, are you not, who do you fancy? And some of them haven't had a sexual awakening. And if you ask a kid before they've had a sexual awakening, who do you fancy? It's creepy, it's icky, they don't want to, but it's been pushed upon them.
Yeah.
So it is hard on them.
It's very interesting though, isn't it? Because this sounds to me like a very kind of ultra-conservative viewpoints of what it means to be male and female, and the idea that your sexual orientation is somehow related to your biological sex. We know from Hannah Barnes' book on the Tavistock that between 80 and 90% of adolescents who were referred to that paediatric gender clinic were same-sex attracted. So to what extent is this ideology just kind of fixing gay people, making them straight?
Well, that's my big concern. And, what you're saying is it's very regressive. These are very regressive gender roles. I mean, a boy who likes to wear a dress is actually a girl. I mean, 40 years ago, we were trying to expand the possibilities for gender roles. And now we've got these very rigid roles, and you fit into either one or the other. My big concern is that camp boys are being transed. And, we're dealing right now with these big conversion therapy bans saying that if you challenge someone's transgender identity, that's conversion therapy. I would say that what's going on with affirmative care in JIDS at the Tavistock, that's the conversion therapy. They're taking butch lesbians and camp boys, and they're saying, you're born in the wrong body, and we're going to fix you, and we'll make you normal.
So it's interesting, because I've met a number of detransitioners. I remember one in particular was just an effeminate gay man, very young, but when he was an adolescent, he was persuaded he must be a girl because he was camp, and now he has no genitals. I mean, that's the problem here. The stakes are very high, and you will have worked with a number of detransitioners. I mean, the surgery that some of them have had, I mean, it can ruin people's lives.
It's devastating because, there's a comical aspect, and we can all look online and it's kind of funny, and then you actually meet the people who bought into it, that they could be a different person, that they could change their body and have a different name and nobody would refer to the old person. I remember one girl who was a detransitioner, so she medically transed at a young age, she took puberty blockers, took testosterone, masculinized her face and her body, and she had a mastectomy. And I remember her saying, I had a mastectomy and before anybody had ever touched my breasts in a loving way. And so it's kind of like she'd had no sexual experience before and now she had a mastectomy, so she never will have a loving.
But people will be shocked by the very idea that a mastectomy for a healthy adolescent female, that's even going on. People will be sceptical about that.
Yeah. People will be sceptical about it, and it is happening. It's not happening under 18 in the UK, but they hit the ground running at 18 because they've been so intense. And they have really, an awful lot, like we've talked about the gay and the lesbian, they're definitely a large proportion, but a lot of these kids have autism, and they have a very literal understanding, and they genuinely think this is going to be the solution to all these unsettling feelings of alienation and hating my body and feeling uncomfortable. I'm going to be a boy and I'll be better. I'll feel better. So there's a harrowing stories of detransitioners, and we had about 15 of them at the last conference in Killarney. And, there was a panel and they all said their stories, and you just realise, oh my God, it's the most vulnerable people who are getting caught up in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Joe, we don't have much more time, but could you perhaps tell us how people can find out more about Genspect, about the think tank, and maybe your next conference?
Right, genspect.org. We've got all sorts of resources for parents and educators and people. We've got a program for detransitioners. We subsidize psychotherapy. We have alternate programs for them. It's all on the website, and our next conference is going to be in Denver, Colorado in November, opposite the other WPATH conference at the same time, and we'll likewise be bringing people together from politics and education and all different fields to present an alternative view.
So no matter what WPATH wants, there will be a debate.
There will be a debate.
Yeah,
indeed.
excellent. Well, Stella and Joe, thank you both so much for joining me.